Good afternoon, everyone. I think we're just waiting for a few people to start filtering in. It's 1 o'clock. Hi, everybody. My name is Sam Spencer. I'm Chief Executive Officer of Aristotle Metadata, and I'm here to kind of run you through a webinar on developing data dictionaries to help us kind of build out understanding in our organizations of what our data means. We're just seeing a few people filter in, so I'm just going to start admitting attendees, and we'll get kicked off in the next minute or two. So hope everybody's really excited. I think this is our second of our Aristotle Accelerated series that's really designed to help us understand, what our data means and how we can help people, across our organizations really get involved. Because it is short, I think we'll get started. I think people will catch up. And just to let you know, we are going to be recording this one. So if you've registered or if you know people who've registered who are interested in attending later on, we'll be able to work with them in future as well. So you'll be able to share the recording after it's gone through. I might just have to tick back and forth to admit people, but without further ado, I'm going to get us started. So as I said, everybody, welcome to Aristotle Accelerated number 2. Where we're going to talk about developing high quality data dictionaries. As part of today's agenda, we're going to cover a couple of really interesting topics, a couple of really interesting things. So the main things that we're going to look at is we're going to do a bit of a refresher of the MAST methodology. So if you're familiar with any of our marketing material over the last 8 months, we've been doing a lot of work building out what we think is a really pragmatic way, a really easy way to get people involved in data management. I think a lot of us have been in that situation where we just get these responsibilities put on us, and this is a methodology we're helping people use to understand how they can get involved. Secondly, we're then going to start looking at some really cool word templates we've been building out to assist with that process. So one thing that we know is we've talked with a lot of people who are users of Aristotle who talk about their journey getting onto the platform where their organizations, weren't quite ready. And what we want to do is help people earlier on. There's a lot that we can do outside of tooling. We don't need fancy tools to do data governance. There's a lot we can do early on to start developing that best practice. So we're going to share some templates we've been building to help you understand what's necessary, what can you do with the tools you already have in your organization. And then we're going to have a little look at Aristotle. So what we're going to look at there is really understanding, what tools are in Aristotle to help develop those data dictionaries. And then thirdly, we're going to have a little look at what we can do to clean up the mess afterwards. So one of the natural questions that we'll ask and we'll answer really well is, what do you do when you start to see that mess when we start building these data dictionaries out? And that's one of the answers that we've got already in Aristotle to help you on that journey. So to give everybody a bit of a refresher, I want to talk about why it's important for us to document this information, why it's important for us to bring this information into a central location. And I love this example. I love the example of fireworks because we often think about data as this big, showy spectacle. It's this big event that we produce dashboards out of, we produce graphics out of, but fireworks can be volatile and dangerous. Like, I love using the example of recent data breaches to talk about how volatile and powerful our data can be in the wrong hands. Now, we don't want to lock our data up, just like we don't want to lock up fireworks, but we need to build ways so that we can, store it, so we can track it effectively, so we know where our data is being used, so we can produce those insights really quickly. When we need to have a big flashy spectacle, how can we get access to that information really easily? And that's what MAST is designed to do. So MAST is designed to help us build that capability across our organization from an organizational perspective to go, what do we need to be doing? Well, we need to be tracking our metadata. That's how we build these really high quality assets. It's how we track these very dangerous, these very volatile assets and manage them effectively. And the way that we do that is we follow this ideal process that we've put in place that helps users at the right stages in their organization, at the right stages in their maturity life cycle, do the right activities. So today, we're really going to be focusing on just one of those components, and that's this documentation and metadata component. So we're not going to talk about strategy. We're not going to talk about publication. We're not going to talk about inventory, which if you've seen the last video, and I'd strongly recommend go back and watch that one. Talks about how we build these processes across our organization to just get an inventory. Once we've got that inventory, today's session is all about documenting it. What are we going to do to document this information? And the one question that I want to kind of head off really well is, but when we start documenting it, when all these different business areas start writing down what their data means, we're going to get duplicates. And the answer is yes. And that's a good thing. We want to get more people engaged in documenting what their data means. We've got an entire step, that audit and harmonize, that's designed to clean up that once we've got it in the system. Once we've started to get people in that maturity mindset of documenting their data, that's when we can harmonize. That's when we can start to find those identical terms and bring them together. And that's what we're going to have a look at the end of the talk. So today, yes, Siggy, I'll answer that question, yes. We'll send through links to everything as part of the post-event stuff. And if you want, like, this is meant to be an interactive thing. If you've got questions or comments, fire them through. I can see them and stuff. We're already getting into that casual part of the conversation. So documentation, what is it? Well, documentation is really just around helping us understand the structure of data. There's actually a lot that we can do to document our data without actually sharing it, without making it available, and without reducing the security of it. What can we do to tell people what data we hold? You know, we have data about people, we have data about banking information, we have data about, you know, employment, or, you know, how people access services. We have a lot of that information. Writing that down helps people know what's available. From a data breach perspective, and it's becoming such a hot topic now, it helps us know what assets we're maintaining and how we're controlling them. The idea is that, again, at this stage, we want to document our as-is processes. One of the things that we see is people often focus on the long term, the strategic vision, and go, how are we going to clean up this mess and make sure it never happens again in future? We're not going to worry about that today. What we want to worry about is we've got data assets right now. Like, we don't need to focus on building the best ontologies and the best vocabularies. What we want to focus on is documenting the mess we have so we understand what's available. Really good documentation, even about assets that we maintain right now, is still very, very valuable. It's probably one of the most valuable activities we can do because it tells us what our business as usual is. So the big pitfall here, the big masked pitfall, is don't try and harmonize too soon. It's one of the things that we've fallen into, and we've really started to you know, struggle to not do ourselves, is when people tell you their definitions, document them as is. Just go straight in and go, yep, if that's your terminology, let's just write that down. And then later on down the track, we'll look at cleaning it up. So what is a data dictionary? Like I said, it's a really short video right now. But what I want to do is say, like, we've got a really nice video up online. If you search 5-minute metadata, we've got a really good video that we did when we started the company around what is a data dictionary. And this screenshot really tells you it's a way to write down what all of our data terms mean. It's our business glossaries, it's our data dictionaries, it's our information asset registers. When we see these fields, when we see these columns in our data sets, what do they mean and how do we track them? You know, that's really what a data dictionary is. It doesn't need to be any more precise than that. It's just writing down what our terms are so that when we start to see these common terms within our data, we know how to interpret them correctly. If we have a specific definition for a student or for a business or for a client, we can go, well, this is what it means in this context. This is what we're collecting about it. And this is how we're collecting it. So we've got a really good video that talks through all the really high level things that a good data dictionary should have. And the reason for that is really threefold. Like, there's three things that we can get out of a really good data dictionary. And that can be as simple as a Word document that we'll show you in a second. The first thing is it improves the clarity of data. Like, and by that we mean we know what that data means. We know how to interpret it correctly. We said, I was at a session the other day and we were talking with people and we said, you know, we were talking about AI and how that's going to influence what we do from a documentation perspective. And I said, well, you know, when we collect data because people wrote some legislation. We collect data because people wrote some policy. So when we document our data, people need to document that data so we know how to interpret it. I think everybody who's played with ChatGPT, and I'm really a big fan, we've seen those struggles where the AI has interpreted it incorrectly. The more we document about our data, the more we understand what's in it. This is a data set. It's about a number of dictionaries that I own at home, and I've got the title, the publisher, and the year. Very clear around what that data means. It improves the discovery of data. So again, a data dictionary is really around helping us understand what that is. When we start to pull these data dictionaries into systems like the Aristotle Metadata Registry, the more text, the more terms, the more knowledge we can put around what our data means, the easier it is to find it. And that's what really drives these intelligent engines is when we write down what our data means, we can find it easier because we can use the rich text search of tools like Aristotle to find what the data that we're interested in is and how to find it. And it also, like by building those high quality links, it helps us find similar data that's been curated by people as well. And then lastly, it improves the security of data. And this is a really, again, it's that hot topic that everybody's talking about. When we write down what data we hold, we know what data we're managing, right? Data shouldn't be, or we shouldn't be hiding our data dictionaries because that's the information that tells us what we're holding at an asset level. What data are we holding? Do we have personally identifiable information? Do we have information about people's bank details? Do we have information about their physical addresses, their educational or their employment histories? Do we have information about people's health records? Every organization, whether you're in the private sector or the public sector, the answer is yes. You have bank details, you have people's names, addresses, you'll have their health information. What we want to know is where is that information stored, because it allows us to adjust quicker. It allows us to audit quicker. We can find where our most sensitive assets are so that we can manage them best. The more we can document, the better we're able to react or act proactively so that we can manage that data now and in future. So the key takeaway is a data dictionary. There's an activity around managing it. There's an activity around writing them, but it really unlocks a lot of capability for us to find and use data, but also for us to protect it. A lot of the work that we've done, we've worked with people and the outcomes are always the same. Data dictionaries and metadata are a privacy enhancing activity that organizations can undertake. So with that scariness aside, I'm telling you, you're going to have to do this. It's really important. How do you do it? Well, it's not that hard. So we've actually developed some templates for this, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. Because again, I'm on a bit of a word kick at the moment. I think it's going to be really useful because it's going to be useful for you now, and it's going to be useful for us when we work with you in future as well. It's a really bold statement, but I want to work with everybody here on the call, and I work with a lot of people who've dialed in today as well. So developing your first data dictionary is really easy. We've developed the template for you. So if you were at our last session, what we've done is we actually built some really nice Word templates that were designed to put in front of users to help them document their ONDC Core 26 attributes. If you signed up, we sent that inventory out to you, that inventory template out. We sent a really nice ISO 11791 one, so a really nice standards-driven one. And then we sent out the ONDC one. So if you're in the Australian government, we gave you a really nice, unofficial, but really good quality data dictionary template. So you can data inventory template. So you can start writing that down. It's designed to capture that high level of information. What are the assets we hold? And now we're going to talk about what's inside them. So what that means is we want to talk about, what each field is and how we're going to manage them. And to do that, I'm going to bring up an example right now. So I'm just going to bring up this example that we've developed right here. So actually what I'll do, change that. I'm going to go right here. I'm going to tell you where we got it first. So this is a really collaborative team effort. Me and some of the analysts pulled this together. We went to data.gov.au and we said we want to grab a real life example around rental and bond data. I think bonds and rental information is really, again, it's a really hot topic right now. I think the property crunch is hurting a lot of people. So it's really important for us to be able to track that. We want to know from a welfare perspective, what is the data and how can we manage those outcomes? So we've grabbed some of these data assets and we've started documenting. So data.gov.au, really fantastic inventory, really good for sharing open data, but we want to be able to capture some of those data dictionaries. So we've actually developed a data dictionary from this asset to show you what we mean. And what that looks like is this. So it's a really, really simple, straightforward Word template that's designed to capture the help documentation around how to use it and all those core attributes. So everything in the ONDC, very similar to the last webinar. So we've basically done a copy and paste exercise, and it took about 10 minutes. I think we prepped this. We had some technical issues this morning. We prepped it very quickly to start bringing this information in. So developing our data inventory didn't take very long at all. What we then did was we continued to capture the rest of that information, but down the bottom of the page, we've added an addition to this. So we've actually started to expand these templates for advanced users. So we're going to send you a second template after this phone call, after this webinar, that says, here's another one. So if you've got users who are more advanced, who want to do more things, this is how we can do it. So what this is this is a data dictionary that's designed to capture, again, all of the information about our data assets. So you can see here, we've captured there's two files within this data set. There's one about active bonds and there's one about closed bonds. So people who've ceased a rental and got all their money back, that's what we're tracking there. So where is that money coming from and going to for people in low income areas or people who are just renting in general? So that's what we've got here. Now, it looks quite complex. It looks like we've set up this grand table and we've got nested tables, and it's, how do we know that every user is going to do the same thing? And this is our gift for the data stewards on the phone call. This is going to operate exactly the same as the one that we looked at last time. So what we've done is we've actually done the same thing that we did on the last phone call and set this up as a template. So all these fields are going to be locked down. And I'm just going to lock that down right now to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to restrict the editing on this form. Yes, because I forgot to do this just before the phone call. And as you can see, it's only allowing me to actually change these fields. So we can actually lock down this Word template so that we can only change specific fields in specific ways. The value here, the advantage here for our data stewards and our people trying to engage with business areas is that we put this Word document in front of users and say, write it in from top to bottom, just tell me everything about your data. When they get to the bottom, I'm going to just scroll back down the bottom. When they get to the bottom, they're going to see the ability for them to now add in all this information around our data dictionary. Well, what is a suburb? It's a residential area. What is a state? It's a political entity. It's one of the Australian states that we have available. We can actually go down even further and start to document. That's my example. We can actually start to document these codes as well. So we actually start to get an enhanced understanding of what this data means. We've got housing type, and we know when we see a 1, it's a private housing. When we see 2, it's a community housing project. So we're starting to get more and more information around how to use this. Again, it was very straightforward for us to start filling this in because the options are quite limited. We can only capture certain information around it. So we can only put certain text in certain areas. And you'll also notice these pluses here. So the next example that we're going to look at is our closed bond. So somebody who's been working or has been renting. And as you can see, we haven't actually filled out everything around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new one in. And that plus sign is there so that we can add in more and more information, more and more rows of data to start documenting each of the files that are present within our data asset. It's kind of cool, I think, my personal opinion. And we've gone so far as to enable us to actually duplicate all that information again. Undo that one. Duplicate all that information so that if I need to add extra files, we can actually document each of those as well. So for each additional file that goes into the system, we can document each one of those side by side. So these templates we're going to be sharing are designed to capture that early stage activity. I'm really interested in documenting my data, but I don't know how to do it. If you're an Aristotle user, you're probably going to see this is really has a strong comparison to our data sets and our distribution. So I'm going to switch back to Aristotle now and say, this is for you, the users who are early in their maturity life cycle or trying to work with business areas who are early in their maturity life cycle. These templates are going to be there again to help us start documenting this information. On the next webinar, we're going to be showing some proof of concept research that we've been doing to bring all of this in to make these imports really, really quick. So if you've got that question of, why do I want to go to the effort of writing all these Word documents? Well, we found the feedback's been they're really easy for business areas to engage with, to start writing down what their data means. And we're going to be helping you uplift all of that capability directly into your Aristotle registry if you've got one available. So lots of advantages there. If you're not at that stage where you have a registry, still document your information. If you are, we've got tooling that's going to help you bring that into the Aristotle registry. The second thing that I wanted to look at is, well, how do we manage that inside Aristotle? Well, actually, this is pretty easy. So what I've done here is, as you can see, we've got our rental and bonds information. So we've brought this into Aristotle. And the advantage here is that it's a little bit more accessible. I like Word because it's a really good way to engage users, but this is how we're going to work with users to help them understand what their data means in the longer term. It allows us to do those linkages. It allows us to bring all this information together. It also allows us to see our all of the data sets as well, and all of the common attributes within the system. So as you can see here, we're starting to see our data elements being documented in a little bit more depth. What is an address? What is a postcode? Am I using postcode in a number of different places? Do I use Australian state? And I think here's my user interactivity bit. Throw me a thumbs up if you've ever dealt with a data asset that captures an Australian state. And then throw me a second thumbs up if you've ever had one where you use different code lists for each different data set. One of them uses, the first letter. One of them uses a number. Sometimes they're ordered differently. Sometimes it's ordered alphabetically, which is great for those of us who live in the ACT. Sometimes it's ordered by population, so New South Wales comes first. So you start to see every different area managing these same concepts differently. So that's the challenge that we're going to see now, as we start to see where we've got all of this information coming into the registry, but how do we manage it now that it's coming in? Well, as you can see here, for the example today, we've done a really short version to show you how we can bring all this information in. Again, we've got our rent, we've got our address, we've got our suburbs, we've got text, we've got postcodes and codes. So we're starting to build up this really rich ontology. But the challenge is we're going to start seeing, and I'm going to jump back to my slides really quickly for this one. So we did that example. The challenge here is that the advantage of bringing all of that into a registry and managing it into a registry is that it gives us a single place to search for our assets. We can find those common data elements, we can link between them, and I'll show you what that looks like, but we can click through and we can find all of our related data. If we're all using the same definition for an Australian state, it becomes really easy in Aristotle to just click and find all the data assets that are using it, so we can start building up our linkage keys and finding related data and linking it together to produce new data assets. It also helps us build a common understanding because we can see where the same information is used and collected and where it differs. The challenge that we have is often different areas, and this is that immediate pitfall, is different areas will be capturing this information in different ways. And you'll see that in this example. What we've got is we've got two different definitions for location. We've got a location and a suburb. So we've got the same definition in this first data set. We've got a suburb is a location is a suburb in a residential area. And we've duplicated that definition down here. So we're lacking that comparability. If I was to click in, I would see that my address suburb isn't actually used in any other data asset. So I don't know the same information's being used. Fortunately, in Aristotle, we've built in a lot of tools to support that. So we want to encourage you to develop that best. Document everything you've got, bring everything into the registry, because we've got tooling to support that. What we've actually built, and I think we demoed this not on the last webinar, but one before, is what we're calling the metadata merger. What it's designed to do is it's designed to capture that mess and help you clean it up in a really iterative fashion. So what we've identified is I've gone through, or actually Shikara's gone through, helping me this morning, credit where credit's due. Shikara's gone through and she's actually built this merger for me to look at for today's webinar. Now, she's had a look at the definitions and she said, well, state and Australian state, they're actually the same thing. We're collecting them in two different data files, so two different distributions are collecting the same information, but they're describing it differently. How do we resolve that? Well, what we've done is we've brought all those links together and said we want Australian state and address state and address Australian state to become the same meaning. We're going to link everything together. So we're going to merge it all here. So we've found all of our original links, and we're going to merge them into this new harmonized term. So again, this is that audit process coming into play. The ability for us to audit and harmonize across the registry is really important. Shikara's gone in, she's clicked these and brought them together and said, look, in my professional opinion, I think these definitions are the same. So what we're going to do in less time than it takes me to explain the process is we're just going to execute that merge. So I'm just going to click that, and it's actually just brought all those things together really quickly. So when I start to see my address state, and I'm looking for areas where this terminology is used, I can see a merger has happened. It's brought those terms together. So I can track that across the registry. I can see where these terms have been used, superseded, or changed. And then I can also start to see that it's being used in a number of different data files. So here we can see it's being included in 2 different distributions in the registry. I can click in and I can see all that information in one place. I can actually start to see where those definitions are being used. When I go in now, if I was to go in and actually update this and start adding more information to my closed bonds, what I can do is I can open that up, and I can manage my data dictionary directly in Aristotle. So again, it's not just a place we're putting this content. Now that I've started to develop that really high quality curated information, I can start to put all of that text in. I can describe and define how my terms are being used, and I can link in all those different fields and all of those different attributes. So when I want to update this one, I can update it to the correct state. I can look for my address state. And I can bring that in. So I can start to use those common data elements. So again, I start to build a high quality understanding of data as it's being used in my organization. So what we've looked at now, and I'm going to jump back to slides because I think we said we're going to keep these to a short 30 minutes for the Aristotle Accelerated ones. And I think I've done everything. That's everything on my agenda. So jumping back to my slides, that's the whole purpose of bringing this together is, so what we've looked at today is we've looked at why is this documentation important? Why is it necessary for us to build that capability? And I always like to make sure we front load with a lot of reasons why. Like it's really useful to know why we're doing this. It's because it helps us understand our data. And as I said, we're going to be sending out some really good tooling to help you capture that information right now. So if you're not an Aristotle user, you have no excuse. You can do this. You don't need fancy systems to start documenting your information, but it does really help when we start doing those audits. If you are an Aristotle user, you have the same capability. Hop directly into the system and you can edit and create those data dictionaries, attach those common data elements and create your own data elements without worrying about how it's going to impact the rest of the registry. The idea there is we want to get people, we want to encourage people to document what they know. Like if there's common data elements, we want to use those, we want to link back to them, we want to reuse the things that are common across the organization. But don't be afraid to document what you know as well, because that's what the tooling is there to support us. There to support us bringing these terms together so that users can understand what their data means over time, because it is a journey. So in summary, we looked at the developing the common data vocabulary. I think it is like running through it's going to be easier. So overview of data dictionaries. We've got 2 minutes left and I'll throw open to questions because I always love Q&A. Start capturing your data dictionaries alongside your inventories. While you've got people engaged in that process, start to give them templates to build out that process. All the templates that we'll be providing to everybody are Creative Commons. So we don't want to lock this knowledge away. We don't want to lock this capability away. If you don't like how we've structured it, don't do it. But take that idea, take the ability that Word has for us to build out some of that form technology and start capturing it in a consistent way that works for your organization. Because if you do it in that structured way, and if you need assistance with that, we're happy to help with that as well. But if you do that, then we can start uplifting that into technology like Aristotle. Where you can, reuse those data elements that you've already developed. This is one of the key considerations that you'll see in Word is you won't be able to relink across these data assets. You will be doing some duplication. And that's where Aristotle becomes really powerful. Once you've developed that common terminology, use as much of that as you can. Use your common state and state information. Use your common code list for state, for address, for personal attributes. Use those common demographic indicators because they're useful for building consensus across the organization. And then the third recommendation out of this one is document first. We have a process for cleaning it up, and we have tooling that supports that. We have a process within MAST that's designed to help us understand why we want to focus on different steps at different stages. Coming back to there we go. By doing that documentation up front, we can start to build that detail around what our data assets mean, and that's what's going to give us the capability to do that harmonization. Once we've got 10 or 12 different data dictionaries, then we can start to look for that commonality. Then we can start to publish that as a way for the organization to move forward with a really consistent set of data. Probably the last slide I'll put up before I open for questions is don't get stuck on the master pitfalls. Don't get stuck in the weeds. It really is focusing on each data asset and documenting each of them individually as a way to build that consistency. So with that in mind, I'm going to stop. It's 1:30. I think we've done a full, fast 30 minutes of what that means for you. If you've got any questions or comments, please pop them into the channel, and I'm more than happy to answer those. And after this, we'll be sending out access to links to information about the metadata merger. We'll be sending out links for those templates as well, along with a section on our community around questions and answers around that, and any other feedback that you've got around the system. So are there any questions before people start rolling away, or are you all raring to go and start making data dictionaries? Lots of thank yous. Thank you, Shikar, for sharing the recording. We'll send that out with the post invite email as well. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Have a good afternoon.